She took a step forward, not fully realizing what she was doing, until her voice cut through the air. "I don't care who I am," Maya said, her voice louder than she intended, drawing the attention of everyone around them. "But maybe you should think about why you felt the need to call the police in the first place. What was it about me that made you think I was a threat?" The woman froze. Maya's words hung in the air like an accusation, and Maya didn't regret them. She needed the woman to understand, even as she wouldn't admit it. But just as quickly, she saw the shift in the woman's eyes, an anger that was ready to boil over. The officer looked between the two of them, his expression unreadable. Maya could feel his discomfort, but it wasn't the same as the woman's. He wasn't concerned about her being a threat, but about the situation escalating further. For a moment, Maya thought she saw the woman hesitate, a flicker of recognition in her eyes. But before anything could be said, the sirens of another patrol car approached in the distance. More officers were arriving, and suddenly, the situation felt much more serious. What had started as an awkward confrontation in the park was rapidly turning into something neither Maya nor anyone else could easily walk away from. The sound of the sirens grew louder, and Maya's heart raced. More police cars were pulling into the park, their flashing lights reflecting off the trees. It felt surreal, like this small, quiet moment in the park was spiraling out of control, becoming something far bigger than she ever expected. She glanced around, catching the eyes of a few bystanders who had gathered at a distance. Some of them seemed curious, others uneasy, but no one was speaking up. No one was intervening. It was like they were all waiting to see what would happen next. The woman who had made the call still stood there, her face flushed with a mix of confusion and guilt. She had been caught off guard by Maya's response, but there was no apology. Instead, there was a defensive posture, like she was trying to justify her actions, even though she knew they didn't make sense. Maya could feel the weight of that judgment on her shoulders, heavy and suffocating. As the additional officers stepped out of their patrol cars, one of them approached the officer who had first recognized Maya. Their conversation was quiet, but Maya could see the tension in their body language. The other officer glanced over at her, his gaze lingering for just a moment before he looked away. Maya swallowed hard, trying to steady her breathing. She didn't want to be caught up in something bigger, but she also couldn't just stay silent. What if this was happening to someone else? What if she let this moment pass, and it would only get worse for others? "Ma'am," one of the new officers said, addressing the woman who had called the police. "Can I ask you why you felt the need to make this call?" There was no accusation in his voice, but the question was clear. He was digging for an answer. The woman shifted uncomfortably, clearly not prepared for the level of scrutiny that was now on her. Maya felt her pulse quicken. This was it. This moment right here could go in so many different directions. She wanted to know what would happen next. Was the woman going to back down, admit her mistake, and apologize? Or would this escalate even further, with more officers getting involved? She couldn't help but glance at the approaching cars. The air seemed to thicken, charged with an unspoken tension that pressed in on all sides. It was like the world was holding its breath, waiting to see what Maya would do next. Should she walk away? Should she continue to stand her ground? The question loomed in her mind, but before she could answer it, the woman spoke up. Her voice, shaky at first, started to gain confidence. "I saw her sitting there. I thought she looked out of place. I thought." She stopped herself, as if realizing the weight of her words. But the damage had already been done. Maya's chest tightened, the familiar frustration bubbling up again. It wasn't just the woman's words, it was the assumption, the fear based on nothing but her appearance. Maya had lived through this countless times, but today, it felt like it was all coming to a head. And then, just when it seemed like the moment couldn't get any more intense, Maya saw something in the officer's eyes, something that shifted the whole dynamic. There was understanding there, a recognition that what had happened here was more than just a misunderstanding. And yet, the tension still hung in the air, thick and unresolved. Just as the officer's gaze seemed to soften, As if he understood the weight of what had just occurred, the silence was shattered by a sudden voice from behind. It started like any other afternoon in the park, birds chirping, kids playing, and people enjoying the fresh air. But for one teenager, a peaceful day was about to take an unexpected turn. As 17-year-old Maya sat on a bench, scrolling through her phone, she had no idea she was being watched. A woman nearby, tense and glaring, clutched her purse and whispered to another parker. Moments later, she pulled out her phone and dialed 911. "There's a suspicious person in the park," she said firmly. Maya looked up, confused, as the woman pointed in her direction. Within minutes, police arrived, their radios crackling. Officers approached, but just as things escalated, one of them suddenly paused. His eyes widened as he recognized Maya. "Ma'am, do you know who she is?" The woman scoffed. "Why does that matter?" What happened next left her speechless. The officer's voice was calm but firm as he addressed the woman. "This is Maya, the mayor's daughter." A cold silence fell over the scene. The woman's face went pale. Maya had never experienced such a tense moment. She had grown used to the stare. "You saw nothing," the officer interrupted. His voice was hard now, like he had heard enough. "And you don't get to make baseless calls and start trouble like this. This young woman has done nothing wrong." Maya felt a brief surge of relief, but the rival politician wasn't done. He stepped forward, his face tightening. "This isn't over," he said, his eyes locking onto Maya with an intensity that made her skin crawl. "The public is always watching. You can't just sweep this under the rug. There are cameras everywhere, and people will talk." His words were dripping with veiled threats. Maya's thoughts raced. She had already been a pawn in this game, but the stakes were higher than she ever imagined. Her father's rival was trying to use this moment to twist the narrative in his favor. He was doing everything he could to discredit her family, to make her father look incompetent and out of touch. But just as the man was about to speak again, something unexpected happened. Another officer, the one who had been silent until now, stepped forward. He held up his phone and showed the group a video. Maya's heart skipped a beat as she recognized the footage. It was from a local news outlet. The video showed the moment the woman made the 911 call, but what made it so shocking was the audio. The woman's voice, shaky and hesitant, could be clearly heard saying, "I thought she was out of place, but I'm not sure. Should I call?" The officer, "Is everything okay here?" A man had stepped forward from the crowd, his presence commanding attention. He was tall, dressed in a sharp suit, his posture straight and confident. Maya's heart skipped a beat as she recognized him. It was her father's political rival, a man who had been vocal about his disdain for her father's policies. The officers looked up, momentarily caught off guard. The man's eyes locked onto Maya, his expression unreadable. There was something about his presence that felt off. It wasn't just the surprise of seeing him in the park. It was the way he scanned the scene, as if assessing how it could be used to his advantage. "I just received a call from one of the officers," he continued, his voice smooth but forceful. "Apparently there's some confusion here." He turned toward the woman who had made the 911 call, raising an eyebrow. "Did I hear correctly that this young woman is the mayor's daughter?" Maya's stomach twisted. Why was he here? And why did he feel the need to get involved now, at the exact moment when the tension was already at its peak? She could feel his eyes on her, sharp and calculating, and it hit her. The stakes had just been raised. The woman who had called the police stood up straighter, clearly relieved by the appearance of the man. It was as if she now had an ally, someone who could validate her actions. "Yes," she said, her voice gaining strength. "That's what they told me." Maya's mind raced. Was this a coincidence, or had the man orchestrated this moment to make her look bad? She couldn't shake the feeling that he was trying to twist the situation, turning it into something far more public than it had any right to be. Her father's political enemies were always looking for ways to undermine him, and now they had an opportunity to target his daughter. The officer who had initially recognized Maya looked at the man, but the tension was clear in his voice when he spoke. "Sir, we've got the situation under control." But the rival politician wasn't backing down. "I'm just saying, it might be a good idea to investigate further," he said, his tone just a little too smooth. "In these times, we can't be too careful with who we're dealing with." He looked back at Maya, his smile cold. "Especially in a public park, wouldn't you agree?" Maya could feel the walls closing in. The situation had shifted from an uncomfortable encounter to